This is William Anderson, and this is my progress report video. I did mostly management of the team and helping to set team meeting dates and times, and I helped to distribute workload as well as helping in other ways along those same lines to help make sure that things went smoothly. But as far as work on the actual project went, I also designed the majority of the exterior solid modeling with inputs from the group as a whole. And what was cool about our group is that we weren't necessarily restricted to, even though we wouldn't do the majority of work on an issue, usually would have one or two people do the majority of the actual solid modeling. We would more or less design it as a whole. So I did more of the modeling of the exterior, but also helped a little bit with the inputs of how exactly the mechanisms would work and what kind of functions we would want from electronics. And so we had also planned for me to do a lot of the woodworking because our project has a wood exterior for part of the face and the back plate. So we had planned for me to do the woodworking, but obviously we didn't quite get around to that. As far as issues were concerned, the COVID situation is an issue. So because of that, we hadn't really gotten into prototyping as much as we wanted to. And because of that, we didn't have the major difficulties we were expecting farther down the line. We'd expected there to be issues with the pill dispensing mechanisms in particular, as well as the integration of the electronics into that. Just due to their complexity and due to the functions that we were trying to do, we were expecting there to be some issues between having the pills contained and actually dropping them. And that dropping mechanic, we were having issues like thinking how that would integrate for the rotation of the entire cylinder and how that would electronically be coded and how it would actually be mechanically dropped. We had tried to design things with thought into how those issues might come into play later along. Doing the mechanical analysis things with Steve really helped us to see some of those issues. And because of those, we were able to make sure that all the members who had, more thought or less thought in different issues were able to give their voice. Because sometimes, even though you have more expertise in something, being a little bit more removed from it, you're able to say things, well, like, that doesn't make sense. Why would we have the motor up on top of it or something like that? Or just to help clarify things when other members of the team might not be thinking along the same lines as other people. We'd also plan to do some more small scale testing, particularly of the pill dispensing mechanism. And then just to make sure that everything went together when it came to full size. But quickly we realized the importance of organized effort in putting that into the team. That's why I was able to kind of help more with management, because we realized that our effort was being ill-placed and that we were spending a lot of time doing things that weren't going to be due for a while. So having somebody who is able to kind of step back and say, okay, these are the things that we need to be able to get done. We realized pretty quickly that was helpful. And we also realized that some of us were able to do some things quicker than others were able to. So just kind of, I learned, I guess I should say, that the idiom that many hands make light work is pretty true. Like when you have 5 people working on one thing, it's going to be a lot easier than having one person work on an MCD. And that just helped streamline processes a lot. I also learned that the researching of a project is really necessary in actually designing it. There were a couple times when, like, thinking up ideas and stuff, we had to come back to, well, yes, we can make this pill dispenser, shoot lasers and flames and, attack people or whatever, but is our market really going to want that? And we realized pretty quickly that we really didn't need much interaction between the user and the device because it was going to be used for older persons. So just having that market research side helped to give more of a basis to building cool stuff while also learning how to build cool stuff. Like learning to code in C was awesome. Learning how to do basic Arduino functions was really cool. So having more background in that kind of a thing was pretty helpful. So if we were to continue the project in the future, we would obviously need to have a prototype of it. We never quite got around to that. Uh, but it would also need to have processes streamlined, such as our radio mechanism and our pill dispensing mechanism, like the electronics behind that, the thinking, the computer board, that kind of stuff. Those were two separate mechanisms because it was cheaper for us to get a donor radio from a resale shop and gut it than it would have been for us to try and integrate radio functions into an Arduino. But if that was to like be made into a consumer product, we wouldn't want to have those things separate because that would be expensive and it would also use up a lot more space than it should. Also, the Arduino is pretty expensive because it has a lot of capabilities it wouldn't be using when just dispensing pills and powering a radio. So just kind of consolidating mostly electronics, and also some of the materials involved would be cheaper when you buy them in bulk. So, but the reason that we were focusing so much on cost is because that's one of the issues that we failed to meet with this design was because of the cost of materials, the cost of it wasn't low enough to reach our consumer base. A lot of the elderly people that we interviewed, at the maximum, they said $40, and that was nowhere near our cost. On a lower estimate, it would be about our cost, a little bit more of our cost to make it. And so when we would have to charge about $80 to $100 in order to make a profit, it doesn't necessarily make sense when our consumers want to spend much less than that. So just kind of reducing it to be viable for market, going back to the practicality of the research. So yeah, I think that just about summarizes it.